It's a staggering statistic. Over the past 2 years, there has been a 2,000% total increase in net migration to New Zealand, from just 2,000 to 56,000. Migration figures have now hit new records for 8 consecutive months. With me now is New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters. Morning to you, Winston.
Good morning.
You came in and asked me about trichophilia, which is an obsession with hair.
It's a fetish with hair.
It's a fetish with hair. Anyway, I don't know what that has to do with anything.
Seriously creepy.
Seriously creepy, all right. How concerning do you think these figures are? 56,000 last year.
Well, if you're concerned about how you can provide hospital services, school services and housing, particularly in Auckland, then this is an absolute disaster, because you've got net coming to Auckland 34,000, who will need about 11,000 houses, and we're not even building that many so far. So we're not even providing for the incoming, let alone those who are here or coming from the provinces.
Okay. But is that the problem with migration, or is that the problem with the way we're planning, the way we're coping with growth? Because surely there is a plus side to migration. New Zealand was built on the back of migration, and when these people arrive here, they bring skills, they bring money, they increase the economy.
No. We were built on the back of focused migration. People came here because they had a job, they had a home to go to, they had a town to go to. That's the way it was when we were a great country. But what we've got now is utterly unfocused. They're coming in from everywhere. They're coming in, for example, on student visas, being allowed to work here. So if they're working here, we're paying for their so-called export education. And second, they're being guaranteed they can stay here. All these things have no sort of plan about them. And if you ask any young person in Auckland, or for that matter, around the country who's trying to buy a house in Auckland, how they'll get a start, the answer is they won't get a start. All
right, but this is what the Housing Minister, Nick Smith, has to say. He says the answer is Auckland building new houses, not creating a fortress New Zealand, particularly given the fact that the bulk of the change in migration data is Kiwis returning to New Zealand. Well, again, you can't stop them from coming back.
No, but he's talking bunkum. You see, 110,000 came in. This is the net migration figure. And Mr. Smith is a seriously educated guy, but he's acting plain dumb now and stubborn. He's been caught out, and this policy is dramatically failing, and they won't change it. You know why? Because it keeps up consumerism. It keeps the so-called economy going.
Which is good for the economy. But what you're saying is there needs to be a better plan with regard to who we are getting into this country.
Look, consumption's not good for the economy when it's at the cost of production and exports. The difference between sound economies...
But that comes back to having a plan, doesn't it? That comes back to having a sound immigration plan. So what would you do?
Well, we'd bring in people who we need, not who need us. It's that blunt.
No, that's exactly right. So who are we bringing in now that we don't need?
Well, we're bringing a stack of people who, for example, going into the so-called fruit-picking industry and cheating in revenue big time. We've got all sorts of people who are apparently, we are the hungriest people in the world because they're all down at restaurants coming in as chefs and what have you, when we've got tons of people who could do the job ourselves.
Do you know, proportionally, do you know what proportion of the 56,000 net gain would fit into those categories?
I think it's a huge proportion because, frankly, we'll take this man Abbas who's off there, for example, and who died in the Middle East. How did that guy get here? If he's a genuine refugee, and he becomes an immigrant in the end...
Well, I assume he came here under refugee status.
Look, he had 24 children. 12 of which are still in this country. Who's paying for them?
Well, some of them were adopted children.
Yeah, but he went frequently back to the Middle East. So if he escaped this zone of fear...
No, you make a good point.
Well, it's absolute rip-off of the New Zealand taxpayers.
You make a good point. We don't seem to have a sound migration policy that can be explained. For instance, you can't tell me the number of the percentage of that 56,000...
Well, I tell you why, because they won't keep the figures. They won't do the analysis. They won't, for example, tell you who's coming in and buying homes. You pick up the Herald today, you find that we're the third most popular destination for what? Chinese crooks.
Yeah.
Well, now, usually that would alarm us in most parts of our history, but right now we're numbed down to accepting absolute crap.
All right, so you're saying we need better policy, we don't necessarily need to stick a limit to it.
Better research and better advice.
All right. Yes. Winston Peters, thank you very much for joining us.